The morning started like any other in what everyone believed was my son David's house. I sat at the kitchen table, carefully organizing my daily heart medications, pills I'd been hiding the true severity of from my family for months. The bottles lined up precisely, each representing another expense I couldn't afford while watching my family live so comfortably around me. "Good morning, Margaret," my daughter-in-law Jessica said, breezing into the kitchen in her designer yoga outfit. She glanced at my pill organizer with obvious irritation. "Still playing the sick card, I see." I forced a gentle smile. "Just my vitamins, dear. Doctor's orders." Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. "You know, at your age, maybe it's time to accept that some aches and pains are just part of life. All these pills are probably making you more confused than you already are." My son David entered, already dressed for his job at the accounting firm. He kissed Jessica's cheek and barely glanced my way. "Morning, Mom. Don't forget you're watching the kids after school." "Of course," I replied, though I'd been hoping for a quiet afternoon to rest. My chest had been tight lately, and Dr. Rodriguez had been concerned about my recent test results. But I couldn't burden them with that information. Jessica poured herself an expensive organic smoothie, the kind that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. "David, honey, we need to talk about your mother's situation. She's been living here for 8 months now, and I think it's time we discussed more permanent arrangements." I pretended to focus on my medication schedule, but every word hit like a physical blow. David shifted uncomfortably. "Jess, she's family. She helped us out when we needed it." "Helped us out?" Jessica laughed sharply. "David, wake up. She's been nothing but dead weight. Look at her, barely contributing to household expenses, always sick with something, taking up space we could use for a proper home office." I thought about the irony of her words. If only she knew about the property documents hidden in my bedroom, or the phone calls I'd been taking from my property management company while they assumed I was just chatting with old friends. "I contribute what I can," I said quietly, thinking of the modest checks I'd been writing for groceries, carefully calculated to seem like an elderly woman's limited social security without revealing my true assets. Jessica scoffed. $300 a month? Margaret, this house costs us $4,000 in mortgage payments alone. Not to mention utilities, food, and all your medical expenses we'll probably have to cover soon." David looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Mom, you know we're happy to help. It's just, things are tight right now." I nodded understandingly, though I knew exactly how tight things were. David's salary was $65,000 a year, and Jessica's part-time interior design consultations brought in maybe $15,000 annually. What they didn't know was that I'd been quietly paying their mortgage shortfalls for the past 6 months through my property management company. "I understand I'm a burden," I said quietly. Jessica's phone buzzed, and her face lit up. "Oh, wonderful. The contractor can start on the kitchen renovation next week. David, those marble countertops I showed you are only $18,000. My heart medication sat in front of me, a daily reminder of the stress these conversations caused. Dr. Rodriguez had been very clear about avoiding emotional strain, but living in this environment was becoming increasingly difficult. 18,000. David looked worried. "We just spent 23,000 on your car. Maybe we should wait. Wait for what?" Jessica's voice sharpened. "I already told my design clients about it. We can't keep living like we're poor. After my husband Robert passed 3 years ago, I'd made a strategic decision to appear more vulnerable than I actually was. Robert had left me with extensive real estate holdings, 12 properties across the state, including this house they thought belonged to David. But I'd kept that information private while I watched my family's true character emerge. The next morning, I woke to find my medication organizer missing from the bathroom counter. I searched quietly for 20 minutes before finding Jessica in the kitchen, making her usual elaborate breakfast. "Jessica, have you seen my pill organizer? It was in the bathroom last night." She looked up with feigned confusion. "Your what?" "Oh, those old pills? Margaret, I threw them away. They were expired." My blood pressure spiked immediately. "Threw them away?" "Jessica, those are prescribed medications. They weren't expired, I just picked them up from the pharmacy yesterday." "Listen," she said, not bothering to look apologetic, "I talked to David last night. We're concerned about you taking so many pills. It's not healthy for someone your age to be so dependent on medications. You need to learn to cope naturally. I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. Jessica, those pills are for my heart condition. I can't just stop taking them. She waved dismissively. Stop being so dramatic, old lady. A little chest pain never killed anyone. You're just anxious because you're not accepting the aging process gracefully. That's when David walked in. I turned to him desperately. David, Jessica threw away my heart medication. I need you to drive me to the pharmacy right away. My son looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. But instead of supporting me, he sighed heavily. Mom, maybe Jess has a point. You do seem to be taking a lot of pills lately. Maybe we should get a second opinion. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. David, these medications were prescribed by Dr. Rodriguez. I've been seeing him for 3 years. Jessica crossed her arms triumphantly. That's exactly the problem, Margaret. You've become addicted to the attention of being sick. It's called hypochondria, and it's very common in elderly people who are lonely. Show us the actual diagnosis, Jessica challenged. Show us the test results that say you need all these expensive pills. I hesitated, not wanting to reveal the full extent of my health problems. The truth was that Dr. Rodriguez had been monitoring an increasingly serious heart condition that required careful medication management. I don't need to prove anything to you, I said finally. Jessica laughed coldly. Margaret, you're living in our house, eating our food. I think we have a right to know what kind of medical expenses we'll be responsible for. I went to my room and called James Mitchell, my property manager. James, I need to schedule a meeting with my lawyer this afternoon. Also, I want you to pull all the documentation on the Maple Street property. The house where your son lives? Is everything all right? James, if I wanted to exercise my rights as the property owner, what would that process look like? Well, since they are month-to-month tenants and you're the deed holder, you could give them 30 days' notice. But these are your family members. Yes, I said quietly. They are. I also called Dr. Rodriguez, who was immediately concerned when I explained what had happened. Mrs. Patterson, this is very serious. Your heart condition requires consistent medication. Stopping abruptly could trigger arrhythmia or even cardiac arrest. What you're describing sounds like medical neglect, possibly abuse. That evening, I returned from Dr. Rodriguez's office with new prescriptions and comprehensive medical documentation. The doctor had been alarmed by my blood pressure and heart rhythm irregularities caused by missing my morning medications. I found David and Jessica in the living room, looking at renovation catalogs and discussing their $18,000 countertop plans. How was your doctor's appointment? Jessica asked with fake sweetness. Did you get more pills to rattle around in? Actually, yes, I said, sitting down across from them. And I got something else too. I placed Dr. Rodriguez's medical report on the coffee table. This is documentation of my heart condition and the medications required to manage it. It also includes a statement about the medical dangers of interrupting my treatment. David picked up the report and read it, his face growing pale. Mom, this says you have congestive heart failure. Why didn't you tell us how serious this was? I tried to protect you from worrying, I said honestly. But apparently, my consideration was mistaken for weakness. Jessica snatched the report from David. This could be fake. Elderly people manipulate doctors all the time to get attention and pills. Then why is she living here instead of in assisted care? Jessica demanded. David, if your mother is seriously ill, we can't handle that level of medical responsibility. Who said anything about end-of-life care? I asked calmly. Please, Margaret. Heart failure is heart failure. You're dying, and you're trying to make it our problem. David looked horrified, but I nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right, Jessica. I do need proper medical care. And proper housing. And proper respect. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I'd prepared. David, do you remember when you were looking for a house 3 years ago? You were so excited when this place became available, said it was like a miracle that you could afford something this nice. David nodded, confused by the change of subject. Do you remember who helped you with the down payment? You did, Mom. You gave us $20,000 from Dad's life insurance. I smiled. That's what I told you. But it wasn't quite the truth. I placed the first document on the table, the original deed to the house, showing my name as sole owner. Jessica grabbed it immediately. This has to be fake. David, your name is on our mortgage papers. Actually, I said calmly, David's name is on a rental agreement. This house has always been mine. I've been your landlord for 3 years. The silence in the room was deafening. David stared at the deed, his face cycling through confusion, shock, and dawning realization. I placed the next document on the table, bank statements showing monthly rental payments from D. Patterson to Patterson Property Management LLC. David, you've been paying rent to my property management company this entire time. The mortgage payments you think you're making? That's rent on my house. Jessica was frantically examining the documents. This can't be legal. We've been living here for 3 years. We have rights. You have the rights of month-to-month tenants, I said matter-of-factly. Which means I can terminate your lease with 30 days' notice. I placed the final document on the table, a formal eviction notice, dated today. Due to violations of the rental agreement, specifically, interference with my medical care and threats to my health and safety, you have 30 days to vacate this property. David looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Mom, you own this house? You've owned it the whole time. I own this house and 11 others throughout the state. The rental income from my properties generates about $35,000 per month. I'm not the dependent elderly woman you thought you were supporting, I'm your landlord, and I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for years. Jessica's face had gone completely white. But you live like you're poor. You use coupons at the grocery store. I live modestly because I choose to. But apparently, modest living made you think I was weak and disposable. I pulled out my phone and showed them the banking app displaying account balances that made Jessica gasp audibly. David was reading through the documents with growing horror. Mom, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer except need. I wanted to know if my son would take care of his mother out of love, or if he'd only show respect to someone with money and power. The answer was now painfully clear. Jessica was staring at the eviction notice. You can't do this. We have rights. We have children. You threw away my life-saving medication and told me to accept dying naturally, I replied calmly. You planned to force me into a nursing home so you could have more space for renovations. I stood up and looked at both of them. Jessica, you married my son because you thought he came from money. Well, he does, but it's my money, not his. And David, you chose to support your wife's cruelty instead of protecting your mother's health and dignity. I walked toward my bedroom, then turned back. Oh, and Jessica? About those renovation plans with the $18,000 marble countertops? You might want to cancel them. This house will have new tenants next month. As I closed my bedroom door, I could hear them arguing frantically. Jessica was crying about losing their house, while David was trying to understand how he'd lived for 3 years without knowing he was renting from his own mother. I sat on my bed and took my evening heart medication, pills that were keeping me alive, pills that someone who claimed to care about me had thrown in the trash that morning. My phone buzzed with a text from James Mitchell. Mrs. Patterson, I have 3 potential tenants interested in the Maple Street property. When would you like to schedule showings? I texted back, let's wait until the current tenants have moved out. I think they're going to need the full 30 days. Over the following weeks, David made several attempts to apologize and negotiate, but the damage was done. Jessica, meanwhile, had consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that I had every legal right to evict them and that her interference with my medication could indeed be prosecuted as elder abuse. The house was mine. The money was mine. And most importantly, my dignity was mine to reclaim. They had learned that underestimating someone because they appear vulnerable is a very expensive mistake.